Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Dio, The 13 Years of Nero, out August 27th on Napalm Records. This album has 10 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4 full-length studio album. They are a Canadian symphonic death metal band. Now you perhaps figure out by now this is a concept album, an album that tells a story about the reign of Emperor Nero. Now that story is not just going to be there from a lyrical perspective, it's not going to be there just from a soundscape approach or even atmosphere, it's also going to be there in terms of how the album is constructed and delivered to the listener. This is an album that feels cinematic, theatrical from beginning to end, and everything that it has to offer, including the structure with Act 1, Act 2, in the middle you have Trial of the Gods, an instrumental interlude / intermission style track that really breaks the record, gives you a sense of a break, a pause, prepares you for that second act that it's coming and all the brutality and all the sound that comes with it. A record that's very equal to itself across both acts. The only thing that's really changing, that's really morphing, is the actual story itself, what's happening to the character. Everything else from a soundscape or from an atmosphere perspective stays exactly the same. Very balanced, very cohesive, very linear to a certain degree, allowing the album to have great fluidity and a sense of continuity track in and track out. Once you get into the soundscape, this is a very rich sounding album, an album that brings a lot of different pieces to create a full puzzle. There's not one single piece that's bigger than the others. They're all equal in size and they're all equal in terms of what they're giving to the record itself. But you could feel how robust it is, you could feel how big the album is, how cinematic, how theatrical it is, because you have everything pulling in the same direction. Everything is servicing the songs, everything is servicing the record, everything is servicing the storytelling aspect that their album has in store, and because of that, the album just feels absolutely tremendous in terms of size, in terms of the sound, in terms of the volume that it carries on every single track. Within that soundscape, the pieces of that puzzle, if you will, the orchestration, the guitars, the drums, and obviously the vocals. As far as orchestration is concerned, this album has the fingerprints of Clement Viers, of Karak Angren. He is a master at creating symphonic elements that are not just adding melody, that are not just adding atmosphere. They're also telling the story, they're bringing the characters to life, they're making the story feel visible even though it's not. You're only listening to these tracks, but the way he adds the orchestrations into the songs, you could almost see the story coming to life in front of you. Phenomenal. I love his work, I love what he does with Karak Angren. He brought a little bit of that DNA over to this record, and the impact is undeniable. On the drum side, you have a little bit of morphing, a little bit of growing, a little bit of going where the track is going. There's not a one-size-fits-all brutality approach from the first all the way to the last song. Some tracks, the drums jump into the forefront because they have a lot of power, they have a lot of strength. Some tracks, they're a little bit more subdued. What I liked about the drums was the consistency of approach in terms of following the direction of the song, following the storytelling, and how can we add the necessary piece in order for this to really jump off the pages. And that's exactly what you're going to get from the drums. Same thing could be said for the guitars. A little bit driven at times, a little bit more melodic, a little bit more groovy, a little bit more chunky, always going where they needed to go and really filling in all the spaces in order to create a sense of growth. One thing I noticed about the guitars on this record is that they felt big. The same way the symphonic elements add to the cinematic and theatrical feel of this record, the guitars are doing a very similar, giving you a very similar experience, if you will. Really feeling big, filling in all the spaces, and almost expanding as they move along throughout this album. On top of this, you have the vocals that are very dynamic, that really create the ebbs and flows. Even on tracks that perhaps are a little bit more linear at times, the vocals are really changing the direction of the song, giving you the ups and downs that you need in order for the tracks to be a little bit more energetic. And the reason why they are doing this is because you're dealing with a concept, you're dealing with characters, you're dealing with telling a story. So sometimes the vocals act as the character in the first person, sometimes as a secondary character speaking about what's happening in front of them, and sometimes as a narrator. I like this approach because it makes the album come to life, it makes the stories come to life, and you really feel energized by what is happening. Everything is moving. It's an album that's constantly moving from a soundscape perspective. It's constantly moving from an overall atmospheric perspective. You needed the same to be happening with the vocals, and that's exactly what you're going to get. A lot of force, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of different approaches, a wide range, if you will, at your display. The only issue that I have with this record is it doesn't have a sense of ending. When you look at the start of the album with the Fall of Claudius, the intro that really sets the tone for the record, for that track, but for the record, is not present at the end of the album. So it has a sense of a little bit of being open-ended, or almost a cliffhanger, if you will. I would have liked to see the album come full circle. When you have a design that has Act 1, Act 2, you have an intermission in the middle, you have that incredible intro that sets the tone for the album, you need something similar to that intro as a built-in outro. Not an outro on its own, but a built-in outro to the last song on the record to give you that bookend feel to the story that you're telling. It's not there, and that to me is the only issue. It doesn't take anything away from the playability of the album, it doesn't take anything away from the quality of the tracks on the album, but when you're looking from a concepts perspective, that little piece there at the end is missing. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I love the Fall of Claudius. That's the opening track. You get that built-in intro that really sets the tone, it really sets the table. The drums are pounding, the orchestration fills in all the gaps as far as space is concerned, and then you have that experience of those two elements, drums and orchestrations, coming together with some groovy guitars to really add a punch, to really push the song forward, allowing the vocals to be more of your guide, to really expand on everything that you're going to see throughout this record in one single track, because this song really gives you a glimpse of everything that you're going to get vocally throughout the album in one single song. So it's the perfect intro to this album because it has all the necessary elements that become immediately engraved in your brain, so then when you see them coming into the forefront later on down the record, nothing is strange to you, everything becomes super familiar. Massive song to start off this record. Next we have The Head of the Snake. This is perhaps a more riff-driven song, feels more direct, a little bit driven by the heaviness of the riffs, but by the direct approach that it has and how the drums follow in line with those riffs in order to give like a 1-2 punch that just always feels like it's walking down a straight line. It has that sense of approach to it, it has that sense of execution. The symphonic elements are there on this track, not to really create a cinematic approach or a theatrical one, but more to create a nice aura around the song, to create a nice atmosphere that really encompasses the song well, gives it a little bit more layers, it gives it a little bit more thickness, and takes away a little bit of that flatness, that linear approach that overall this song has. I still love this track because it's very direct, it's very to the point, perhaps one of the most direct to the point songs that you're going to get on this album. Last but not least, the Fiddle and the Fire. The Asian style opening intro of this song is really interesting because it starts off like that kind of melody and approach blends into the overall melody of the track. It becomes part of the design of the way this song comes across, and then the song finishes off with that same melody. So it's a track that goes 100% full circle as it starts as it finishes. In the middle of that, you have a lot of volatility, you have a lot of ups and downs, you have some more methodic moments musically and vocally, and then you have some moments of more energy, of more outburst. Those outburst moments come or become more noticeable in the chorus because the chorus becomes really big, really cinematic, really melodic, musically and vocally, really exploding off the tracks, making the more methodic pieces of the track feel even more methodic, even slower than what they really are. So it's a track that has a lot of volatility, controlled chaos in between those two bookends that really bring the song together full circle from start to finish. This is it. This is XDio with 13 Years of Nero, out August 27th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.